My name is Mel Mancheno. I'm a member of the National Network for Youth Advisory Council, and I'm a published writer with work in the Santa Clara Review, South Florida Poetry Journal, and I'm a recipient of the James Baldwin Scholarship. What we'll be talking about today is storytelling and storytelling done well, as in storytelling that can create change in the world. So to get into that, the power of storytelling is that you can bridge your own anecdotal individual experience and use it to speak to broader truths and experiences and phenomena in society. Through that, uplifting your own experience, opinions, etc., and the perspectives and experiences of those around you who have also experienced what you may have. Additionally, stories shift opinion, change minds, expand perspectives, and leave others with certain sentiments and ideas. For example, someone might read an op-ed and come away with it with a new opinion on a certain issue. They might think, hey, blank is a lot more important than we initially thought. We should pay more attention to it. This is some serious stuff. And down the line, that person might vote for a candidate on that issue. They might donate money on that issue. They might just speak to those around them about that issue and just say, hey, can you believe this? Isn't this something that we should give more attention and effort into? Which, in accumulation, can change the politics of your area and the individual environment you're living in, as in school, work, family, so on and so forth. So, why should you tell your story? Well, you are a unique person with unique experiences and emotions and truths, and in totality, you wield that. So, whether you are a lived experience advocate or a practitioner or an ally, what have you have information that other people simply cannot access because you are you. And by sharing that information, you can add context, depth, substance, and clarity to other people's views on life. Especially when it comes to advocacy, this additional information can be especially compelling. Like the struggles you may have had to endure because you couldn't get access to blank because a policy existed that prevented that. Additionally, your storytelling lets you speak about issues that you find important on your terms within your boundaries. So, if there's something that you feel is especially important, and because you're a unique person, you've had a unique conflict with that thing, maybe, you get to speak about that. You get to share about that. You get to let other people know about that. And within your comfort. You don't have to go beyond your boundaries if you don't want to. You don't have to speak on things if you don't want to. You get to put forward what you think is important. So, in practice, this visual is courtesy of Darla Bardine, by the way. Outline your narrative and integrate your ideas. If you want, pause this presentation right now and just look at this visual. It is amazing. It does a great job at giving you the real building blocks of a story. You want to outline what happened, though. What was your past experience? What was your life like? What happened? What did you experience when that thing happened? How did your life change? And coming away from that at the end, what are the things you want people to think about? What do you want people to think about is a very big thing with your narrative. What ideas do you want people to come away from? Not limited to, hey, this policy is important. Hey, vote for this person. But on a sentimental level, hey, this thing is sad and we should be concerned with it. Just real core, basic principle ideas that people can walk away from totally work in a variety of contexts. And in other contexts, specific suggestions are also immaculate. You will tailor your story to individuals. We'll speak more about that later on, but outline your narrative. Get your story on paper. Think about it, brainstorm it, formulate it, and think about what sorts of things you want people to come away from. Do you want people to be more engaged with their community on a political level? Do you want people to organize with others? Do you want people to simply be more aware about something? That's totally fine too. What ideas, themes, values are you trying to put into your story? They are the things that people will come away from and have to chew on after you're done telling your story. Moving on to sensory details. Sensory details are the things that make your story come to life, whether that's in writing or in public speech. They give tangible imagery and feelings to abstract emotions and abstract thoughts. You appeal through this to the senses like sight, touch, smell, perspective to add some depth to your storytelling. Uh, in poetry, you often have to communicate these really big, bizarre feelings, and you do so via concrete imagery. At least you do so effectively with concrete imagery. To the right, we have poet laureate Ted Kuzer's poem After Years. It goes like this. Today, from a distance, I saw you, walking away, and without a sound, the glittering face of a glacier slid into the sea. An ancient oak fell in the Cumberlands, holding only a handful of leaves, and an old woman scattering corn to her chickens looked up for an instant. At the other side of the galaxy, a star 35 times the size of our own sun exploded and vanished, leaving a small green spot on the astronomer's retina as he stood in the great open dome of my heart with no one to tell. So, Ted could have just said, today I saw my ex and that made me feel really sad. But instead, they chose to spoke about an ancient oak in the Cumberlands and a small green spot on the astronomer's retina. While you probably don't have to get that far reaching with your details and imagery in your writing and your storytelling, it's good to talk about what you saw, what you felt, what it smelled like, etc. A practical way you can do this is the photograph method. It's a method I was taught by a friend of mine who transferred into Princeton University who used this in their personal statement. Basically, you look over photographs from a particular time and preferably photographs that you have a very strong attachment to, and try to channel the details and sensory details of that specific moment. What were you seeing? What were the colors? What did it smell like? Was it hot? Was it cold? Did the room feel small or was it expansive? Did you feel the wind on you? Etc. These are small little details that you don't really think about, but when done well, give extra oomph, severity, and feeling to a story in a way you otherwise couldn't get just by saying or just by telling. Show don't tell. Your high school English teacher was right. So, moving on to rhetoric. There's ethos, pathos, logos. We're going to try to get into each of them, but these are all very deep and expansive. Ethos, in essence, is credibility. Establish your authority, your trustworthiness with your audience when you can, how you can. This could be by speaking to your lived experience primarily, but if you're a researcher or an expert, perhaps speaking and referencing that is also helpful. We have an example here. As a social worker with over a decade of experience working with youth experiencing homelessness, I've witnessed countless young people fall through the cracks of an underfunded system. So very quickly, they talk about what they've experienced and what lends them to be trustworthy. They don't make it very explicit. They don't say, hey, you should listen to me because I'm an expert and I know what I'm talking about. I'm a social worker. I know what I'm talking about, but I do this thing and I've encountered it very regularly. The subtle implication here is I'm familiar. And they're familiar. Over here, we have pathos. Broadly speaking, this is emotionality. And as I was talking about earlier with sensory details, it's a good idea to use imagery and metaphor when talking about your personal anecdotes to make them come to life, to make those emotions come to life. We have an example here. I'll never forget having to choose between eating and paying for a bus ticket to a job interview. It's a decision no one should ever have to make, yet so many people face it every day. It's not very detail laden, but this is an emotional moment. This is a tough moment. This is hard for a lot of people to think about, probably. But it conveys struggle, and that's one of the things you want to do with your story. Get into, hey, why is this a big problem? So on and so forth to convey ideas to your audience. Over here, we have logos, which is reasoning and evidence, broadly speaking. Depending on who you're speaking to, and we'll get into this very soon, you want to use data, statistics, theory to reinforce your points and ideas, to give them empirical grounding, evidential grounding. For some people, that matters a lot. For other people, they really don't care. Sentiment is enough for them. But I think that having a stat or two in your story does give it a little extra bite. So, one little example here is LGBTQ plus youth, like myself, are 120% more likely to experience homelessness, according to a study from U Chicago. So, hard facts, that is a real study. You can go Google that. That's serious stuff. But this detail, just although is a digit, conveys the severity of this issue. Now, altogether, you can use these elements of rhetoric to make storytelling that is persuasive. By balancing these things, you can humanize issues, inspire empathy, and call for change in a way that feels reasonable and well argued. Argued in quotation marks for sure, because you're not trying to argue via your story, but you're trying to influence for sure. You're trying to disseminate your ideas. If you can integrate these things well, you can get your audience to feel, to be impacted, and ideally be motivated to speak up, make things happen in their own lives for other people. Moving forward, tailor to know your audience. When you're making your story, you have ideas that you want the audience to come away with, a structure to it, but the way you tell your story will usually change depending on who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to policymakers, it's more likely that you'll be using evidence, as in studies, research, theory, so on and so forth, and concrete solutions and suggestions that have been maybe tested in other scenarios to impart something on to your audience. You have your story, your personal emotionality, this information about the broader issues that you're encountering, and what the policymaker can do to help you out. If you're speaking to the public, you don't have to do those sorts of things, but you do need to touch into their empathy, their feelings, and leave them with broader emotional sentiments. When you're watching a movie, it is very rare that the director and the screenwriters will weave in a specific lesson that you need to come away with, but you will usually come away with a few ideas and lessons and feelings. That's how you should approach telling your story to the public, to the media. It's a lot less do this, though you can't do that sometimes, and a lot more, wow, isn't that compelling? Isn't that something serious? I can feel that, so on and so forth. And when you're speaking to people who are on the same page as you, other advocates in your own company, using your story and lived experience to galvanize, inspire, and feel a sense of solidarity with a shared struggle is another way you can go about tailoring and modifying your story. But because you're speaking to different people with different expectations about what they're going to be hearing, whether that's from an entertainment standpoint or this is my job and I need this sort of information standpoints, or I care about you on a personal level and I know you on my day to day level, they have different expectations and you will change your presentation depending on those sorts of things, as you should. So, broader takeaways. So, to summarize, your story matters. You have unique opinions, feelings, experiences that create one whole total unique truth that other people cannot access because they'll never be you. And by sharing it, you can open up other people to other possibilities, other things that they might be missing that might change how they act, how they live, and overall improve the world. Know your narrative, know what you want to talk about, know what key experiences and events you had, what lessons you want people to come away with, what feelings you want at different parts of your story. Outline and define what you want to get into on what kinds of issues in a way that is structured logically and makes sense as one total message. Know your audience and tailor your story to your audience's expectations and values. Some people are just reading for entertainment. Some people just want to feel something. Some people want to know right now what you need. They want to help you. They are out trying to change the world. Know who you're speaking to, know what you want them to know, and let them know. Appeal to your senses. Something I didn't touch on is this also requires balance, but speak to details in the world. Try the photograph method when talking about what you endured, what you observed, what you have noticed, and with a reasonable amount of detail, speak to that, communicate that in a way that concretizes those ideas. Draw on elements of rhetoric, ethos, pathos, logos, and balance these things to create a credible, emotional, and logically sound story that can persuade and leave people with something to chew on. So, moving on, bonus tips. Be authentic. People don't like to feel like they are being, I don't know, marketed to, given an agenda. They want real people with real stories and real feelings. They want to feel personal with you. Now, share within the confines of what's comfortable for you. If you don't want to speak on something, if you don't want to get into the grueling details of whatever you've observed in your life, you do not have to, nor should you. But feel free to speak about the tougher times within reason. Feel free to be human, have a laugh at yourself, be a little silly. There's nothing wrong with that. People like humans, they like feeling like they're talking to somebody. It's all the more admirable. Test your story on your peers. Maybe they have something that you don't see, just like, the whole premise of storytelling. They might have something that you don't know, a tactic, maybe a rephrasing of something, a different way you could shift your story. Even better if it's someone close to you who knows about these experiences, they can help you structure what you want others to know. Practice and work on your story for brevity and clarity, and know when and how to end on a powerful note. What I mean by this is your story shouldn't sound jumbled when you tell it to other people, nor should it read that way. It should be clear, make sense. It doesn't have to be short necessarily, but being concise and not going on and on about something that is maybe not very important is a good thing. And knowing when you want to leave your audience on something, because usually in stories, we end on a powerful note. We end on something that's moving. We end on something that we want someone to walk away with and be like, wow, that was really something. Know when it's time to end the story because you've reached past and added perspective on a climax. Stay focused on your goals and adapt as necessary. You're going to be telling your story to a variety of people. Keep what you want them to know in mind, but change it and possibly change its deployments when you see fit. And thank you for listening. I'm not sure if you can reach me via email through this, but drop any questions you can below in the comment section, whatever it might be. And thank you for listening.